So a little bit about me. I've done 13 years in logistics and supply chain, mainly in automotive. That's at OEM operational level, and in aftermarket. I've done a little bit of retail in there as well. I am a father. I'm a massive nerd. Okay, this head didn't get this big from scrolling Instagram. It's full of Star Wars and nonsense like that. And I'm an occasional supply chain professional. There's a quote on there from one of my favourite books, which is actually a children's series of books called Skullduggery Pleasant. And there was a part in the presentation earlier when I was talking about self-worth and self-awareness, but I kicked it out because I've only got 20 minutes to waffle at you. Quick icebreaker, should have thought this one through. I prepared this using Google Slides with information from Google Sheets. It sounded better in my head, and judging by the lack of laughter, I'll drop that one for next time. So we'll do a slightly more interesting piece. So anyone here had experience of supply chain, as in working in it? Okay, yeah, that sounds about right, because the rest of you look less stressed than those who've just put their hand up. So I'm only 18, hence the reason why I look like I look. But supply chain will do that to you. So there is actually a brief history of supply chain, and this is my brief history. It started off coined in the 1800s through the rum trade, which then became East India Trading Company and spices. So the British Empire went and conquered out the whole entire world just to use salt and pepper. We then moved on to when supply chain term was coined in 1905, and then through to the 1920s, which was for mass production. That's when the term supply chain really started to gain some sort of level of traction. We then have toilet roll and bullets. Well, I'll talk about that one later, because that's about wartime supply chain. And then we get the image you see on your left, which if you go to any supply chain conference, you see, ooh, planes, trains, boats. Why have you got that much stuff and nothing's there on time anyway? It's just the way it is. But we also have, and this little lady here on the bottom left, I've made them deliberately small so you can't guess who it is. Does anyone want to warrant a guess at who that is? No? No, that's a bit too enthusiastic for me. That's Hennet Tai. So in 1992, a German archaeologist took some hair samples from some mummies, and in that hair sample, they found traces of cocaine. That's a bit of a spicy subject for this time of the morning, isn't it? Now, cocaine was only available from South America, according to geologists, archaeologists. So supply chain actually existed 1000 BC. So the mummies were getting high in the early days, and therefore they were getting it from far away across the world. So something around supply chain has existed for many, many eons. Supply chain is actually very easy, yeah? Okay, that's actually quite small text, and this is, if it was a TV show, the narrator would be like, supply chain is not easy. And all the non-supply chain people will just say, oh, it's just moving stuff from there to there. It's a walk in the park, isn't it? And truth be told, that park is full of danger, grisly teeth, monsters, usually in the ways of compliance, tax, customs, just sickening. And you've all thought, oh God, they've not got the parts for us. What are they doing? Why are we not selling stuff? Where is your stock? Why is the forecast not correct? Because supply chain is one big pile of supply chain. And when I talk about one big pile of supply chain, I actually mean this is what it really is. Data, risk, compliance, customs, trade regulations, shipping crises, wars, famine, Trump, China, pricing wars, policy, corporate policy. I could literally go on for about another 20 minutes and just have no questions. It is an absolute minefield. And the way to not lose your mind is to plan for risk. So has anyone done any corporate risk strategy, supply chain risk in the room? How did it work out for you? Good, bad, boring? No, it's never boring, is it? I mean, these next slides might be a bit boring because we talk about what is effectively a safety net. So if you don't want to lose your mind, you have to know what's coming. And to know what's coming, you have to have a crystal ball. You have to be very good at predicting things. Now, last year, there were 17 volatile, black swan, unpredicted, ungodly events that disrupted the supply chain across the world. Did anyone struggle with stock around about April, May, June last year? Yeah. Was it all stuck on a boat going around the Cape of Good Hope? Yeah? thing. So it is up from 4 in 2019 to 17 per year. That's from Gartner. So it's an official source. It's not just me making it up for the sake of the presentation. You're constantly disrupted in your parts business by supply crisis issues. And only 82% thought that the mitigation was spent in the wrong area. So what are we spending the money on? Why are we spending it? Where we're spending it? We're not spending it in the right place. And that's usually a reactive measure. To manage the risk and disruption, you need a risk strategy. And then you can manage your risk, and then you can respond well to the disruption. Now, luckily, as an automotive parts business, we have a fairly good flow of stock, I would say. But come April, May, June, and July, although we'd planned ahead, everything was taking a little bit longer than we predicted. So we ate into our safety stock. We just about kept our heads above water. But there was a lot of people across the world who didn't have parts for their vehicles, a lot of people who didn't have boiler parts, plumbing parts, electrical parts, because of reliance on Asia Pacific and supply from there. So what we did is we looked to build a better risk strategy. Now that can involve more stock, more inventory, which if there's any finance people in the room, you're like, don't say that, don't say that. That means more money. You can nearshore. So anyone get their parts from Europe, UK? What do you do?
Work for a German manufacturer for automation.
And they manufacture in Germany, I'm guessing. Exactly. Good. German efficiency. One of the things that we've done, started to do recently, is we have reduced our reliance on Asia Pacific. So a lot of our stock has moved into Romania, Hungary, Poland, Turkey, where manufacturing takes place. Does it cost a bit more? Yes. Do we save actually on shipping? Yes. Does it de-risk and keep the customer happy, meaning we can keep the sales and profits high? Also yes. And to do that, you can't do it on your own. So who here has a Centre of Excellence, quality team, compliance team? Guessing in your business you should have. They're the people who own the risk. Are they responsible solely for identifying these things? No. You within your remit are. And when I say within your remit, each of you will work through sales, operations, and there's going to come a point when you know something is wrong. So some of you may use systems for this. Some of you may use customer feedback. You might think, well, actually, there's a funny feeling in my waters. I don't think something's right. So you have that opportunity to raise risk. And to raise it, you also have to identify what's important, what's not. So that takes you through to risk prioritization. Who here works? We got any automotive heads in? I saw Isuzu on the list. Are you Isuzu? Yeah. Ah, yes. So if you ever get a problem with a car at the end of line, we do something that's called working line back. You're going to identify where the fault is in the production line. And the same can apply for your risk prioritization. So at the end of the day, you've always got a customer, whether that's internal or external. So internally, quality at the end of line, major wreck, minor wreck, will always say, this steering wheel is a triangle. It's not a circle. We've got a problem. Let's go find out what the problem is. And then they will go back to where the steering wheel's fitted, and they'll find out they've got a bunch of triangular steering wheels, and they say, oh, this is no good. Why have we got triangular steering wheels? And they'll just go back to supplier. So your critical finished goods is a huge risk because it affects your sales, your profit, your business partnerships, actually, with your customers, because if you can't supply your customers, they're just like, you're not very good, I think I might go buy somewhere else. And then once you've lost a customer, it takes you years to get them back, okay? Because you can build a reputation 10, 20, 30 years, you can lose it in probably a day or two. Just ask Hugh Grant, those of you old enough to remember. So you work line back, you go back to your plants, and you work out actually what's being impacted at the plants. Do they have quality issues? Do they have supply issues? You go through your material category, then your critical suppliers. So you basically have to work back through the whole chain to make sure that if there is any level of disruption, you are identifying it, you are putting a plan in place, and most importantly, taking, and I know it's going to be covered later today, a data-driven approach, okay? Facts are facts. There's no grey area, okay? The interpretation is the grey area and how you get across it, but ultimately, numbers don't lie. You then have to build a risk process. Oh, do you want to do this? Because it is quite sort of boring to talk about. But not losing your mind involves actually building a plan. How many of you play golf or any sort of sport? I was expecting more golfers in the room given the amount of sales we have. So I was going to ask you to check your tans. If you roll your sleeves up, have we got a clear tan calf line? You visualise what you do. So for those of you who don't play sport, you may do something else where you visualise and you pick yourself, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and this is how I'm going to do it, and that's what I'm going to lead up to it. Sports psychology talks us through that kind of stuff. Building a risk process is very similar. So first of all, you've got to know what's wrong. I've got a triangular steering wheel. It's not very good, okay, unless you're driving a cyber truck. I'm sure they've got something like that in there. And then you have to map your risks and build your portfolio in and around that. So you have to say, what are your risks? Where do they lie? And move on to stage 2, which is actually, how do I mitigate those risks? So I've got a supplier that is struggling with their tier 1, their tier 2. Go to them, find out what's wrong. What's affecting their supply? Do they have any sub-suppliers? Can you help them with supply? Can you help them with parts? Is there any way that you can just get over this first initial hurdle? You then go on to phase 3, which is your implementation of your risk. So you've identified everything, you've written it down. What am I actually going to do about it? How am I going to implement this strategy? So last year, Red Sea, Gaza, Israel, everything that kicked off, it's like, right, December, pirates are attacking ships. We're going to send everything around. It's going to take us 12 weeks. So we say, right, from the stock we have versus our run rate, when's that 12 weeks actually going to hit us? Okay, April. We're in end of December, January. Christmas is coming. Okay, nobody wants to be working. But we're saying, right, we've got a 3-month lead time on most of our product. Order it now. £9.6 million worth of extra inventory just to come in to avoid the disruption. Then have to alter all our lead times in SAP and our demand planning system to make sure that you've got stock coverage coming in and there's absolutely no gap. There was still a gap, but it was just less of a gap because we've mitigated the risk. We monitored that throughout the year, and it was extremely stressful because we were also implementing SAP. I'd not long been in the role, and also I like to do things outside of supply chain. Okay, it's one of those things that you don't want to be working 12 hours a day. You don't want to be on calls at night with China or in early mornings or so on and so forth, because we deal globally. I do look after the European region, but a lot of our suppliers are sort of just everywhere. Hence the reason why we've brought them closer, so it's more convenient for me to not have to do late nights. And once that's done, you've done your assessment. You've done your actions so that you can start to work through your risk. It's nice and easy. Building that strategy also goes along with some key elements of what is negotiable risk, non-negotiable risk, and something that is operational. So again, you have to work through your process and work out, actually, of these things here, what is the most important that I cannot get around or ignore? And we call these non-negotiables, negotiables, and operational. Now, non-negotiables is obviously legal, compliance, health and safety, anti-bribery, corruption laws, international sanctions. So we've got, for as an example, as so many of you have, there is a non-sale to Belarus and Russia. So that's something we can't get around, something that has tripped us up again this year due to new regulations from Polish customs. Just slipped in there on January. By the way, you need to fix this in about 3 days. And also IT regulatory compliance, because there's a lot of cyber laws about now. We also find that what was a negotiable risk piece of risk management before is actually now moving into the non-negotiable. So again, sustainability. Anyone here heard of CBAM? Yeah. Scared? Yeah. Pain in the arse? Yeah. Yeah. Could do without it? Yeah, entirely. Because there are multiple levels of what CBAM means, what carbon footprint means, what waste and recycling means across the EU. So the EU has a legislation, as an example, for recycling at the moment. So when you go to IKEA next, you'll see a little person and there's 3 arrows. Okay, that's the French symbol. There's also a symbol for Hungarian disposal. There's also a symbol for Spanish disposal. Okay, so you've got one big member state with multiple rules. How do you get around that? It is an absolute minefield, okay? But it's a risk, because if you don't do it, you're going to get a nice hefty fine from the EU regulation. And then you'll argue it, and then they'll throw it away, and then they'll tell you to do it better, and then you'll think, oh, I'll do it digitally, and I'll make a scannable label so that all the customers can do this. And they'll be like, but what about the old people? The old people don't have smartphones. And you're like, of course they do. Anyway, it's a nightmare. And then you've got what is your operational impact as well. So once you've worked through all your negotiables and your non-negotiables, all your legal compliance stuff, you have to work out, actually, what does this mean for my operational impact? Do I need a larger workforce? Do I need a smarter workforce? Do I need more systems? Do I need better planning and forecasting? And I know we've got a few people here today. We've got Baxter Planning in. Baxter Planning, where are you? Oh, there we go. Baxter Planning, where are you? Oh, if I was any good at supply chain, I would have had better foresight. And everything that goes in and around it. So it is really, really important to plan these risks. It will stop you losing your mind. It will stop you panicking. It will stop you going bold. Or will it? And ultimately, you're just going to reduce the likelihood of your risk by doing that. And in doing so, you also need to take into consideration two very critical things, is reducing your movement. So, like golf, for the golfers in the room, the less shots you take, the better. It scores you better. And also reducing your footprint. So, has anyone ever walked around a supermarket and then you've gotten to the end? Okay, so you've gone past the fruit and veg, past all the fresh section, you're down with a fizzy pop, okay, all the sugar-induced coma stuff. And then you're like, oh, I forgot bananas. You have to go all the way back to get your bananas. And you're just walking more space and wasting more energy. Same in supply chain. Less moves, the better. When you've done that, you reduce the impact. You have agility in your supply chain. You can move things quicker, faster. You've got better stock. You've got better availability. You've got happy customers. Having visibility is key as well. Anyone still running their supply chain off spreadsheets? Put your hand up. Yeah, me, just me. Okay, well done you lot. Okay, I hope you're happy with yourselves. Visibility in systems. We're going to have some talks about AI later and how it can help. It won't take over like Terminator thinks it will. That provides your resilience. And when you've got resilience in your supply chain, you can literally go and conquer the world. Okay, you ever go to Amazon and anything out of stock? 99.99% of times it's always there. Okay, whether you want toothpicks, neck pillows, they've got all sorts. I can't even start to think of the amount of rubbish I've bought off Amazon. It's all there, and they're all necessary to withstand the disruption. Okay, that will help you not lose your mind. You won't actually be mentally safe because it's supply chain and there'll always be something going on, but it will have a huge impact on what you do. Now, how do you measure this? Anyone measure the cost of lost sales? No? Yep, there we go. So cost of lost sales means if you don't have something, you can't sell it because a customer's ordered it and it's not there. Doing something will cost you, doing nothing will cost you, okay? Whether it's a verruca, whether it's not having a part, okay? And there's always something that says, oh, I'm a bit too busy to look at this right now. I'm a bit too busy to look at this right now. I've done it probably 1,000,000 times because everything in supply chain, especially from an OEM world, everything's burning down around you. When you do get that moment of clarity, though, work out when someone says, what's the ROI on this? What's the ROI on this? And you're like, oh, I don't know. But I can tell you what the cost of not doing something is. I can tell you what the cost of only having 85% stock availability over 95. That 10% of availability versus your inventory versus your sales can say, actually, you're going to lose 10 million this year. You're going to lose 20 million. You're going to lose 30 million. It's always big business. So when someone comes and tries to sell you something on LinkedIn or turns up at your castle with a machine gun, don't turn them down. Just at least give it a little bit of consideration and then let it spark a bit of creativity in your head. That also helps you not lose your mind, okay? Sparking a bit of creativity and thinking about things a little bit differently, going to different industries. As an example, I was down at a supply chain forum yesterday in London, and in about a month's time, we're going to go visit Lucky Saint. So Lucky Saint are a non-alcoholic brewer. They are only 70 people, yet they've got sales in the millions across Europe. There's only 2 sites that they brew and distribute from, okay? They probably don't get angry emails from people from the church though saying, you're supposed to be my lucky saint, not like Copperberg do with their angry cider customers. On to the toilet roll piece. So there's a guy called Tom Peters who coined this quote, leaders win through logistics, vision, sure, strategy, yes. But when you go to war, you need to have toilet paper and bullets in the right place at the right time. And that was same for actual socks. That was a big one during the Vietnam War, is because the sweat from the foot caused athlete's foot, and then they get foot infections, and then when you're trying to run through the jungle and it's not very easy. Everything in the right place at the right time means that there's no excuses for sales teams, sales force to go and do whatever they need to do. So just think about that. Do you have the right amount of toilet roll and bullets? Do you have your supplies and your attack formation? That's it. I've got 22 seconds left to eke out the fact that I have a scannable QR code. If anyone wants to badger me on LinkedIn, please don't send me any vomit-inducing posts of, oh, this is what I did this morning.